Common belief has us convinced that building muscle and losing fat simultaneously, also known as body recomposition, isn't feasible for most natural lifters. You'll often hear that you're stuck with one of two options. You can either build muscle by eating at a caloric surplus, or you can lose fat by eating at a caloric deficit. But based on my own experience and a review of dozens of body recomposition studies, building muscle and losing fat at the same time is definitely possible. It just comes with a catch. Body recomposition protocols are typically more effective if 1. You're a beginner, meaning you're within your first year of proper and consistent training. 2. You're detrained, meaning that you've taken at least a couple months off from training or you've never really trained or eaten properly and consistently. Or 3. You have quite a high body fat, for example anything over 25%. Keep in mind that if you're a more intermediate lifter, body recomposition can still occur in some cases, but at a much slower rate, and mainly only if you're at a higher body fat percentage and willing to perform a slow cut. But regardless of which category you fall under, in order to successfully achieve a body recomposition, there's a few key points that you need to implement correctly, and that's what I'll be covering in this video. In order to successfully build muscle and lose fat simultaneously, the first step is to eat at a slight caloric deficit. Higher deficits will maximize more fat loss but will counteract muscle gain as a consequence. Therefore, you need to set up your caloric deficit so that you're still able to lose some fat while enabling muscle gain. One 2011 study by Garth and colleagues showed that even elite trained athletes were able to gain muscle while losing fat over a 9-week period. They achieved this by performing a slow cut, meaning that they aim to lose a maximum of 0.7% of their body weight per week. This means that for a 165-pound individual, for example, they'd aim to lose a maximum of around 1 pound per week. For most people, this equates to a maximum daily caloric deficit of around 500 calories. Keep in mind though that your weight might actually stay the same throughout the process, especially if you're a beginner or detrained and have a greater ability to build muscle while losing fat. But regardless of what your weight is doing, just make sure it's not dropping too fast and maintain your slight deficit throughout the process.
Hey, I got you guys a protein shake.
Awesome, I love protein.
I know you love protein. I love protein too.
Adequate protein intake is essential for a body recomposition in order to maintain a positive nitrogen balance despite being in a caloric deficit, which just ensures that your muscles still have what they need for growth. Generally, research shows that anything over around 0.8 grams per pound of body weight is unnecessary in terms of muscle growth and maintenance. But with that being said, in recent studies where subjects were able to achieve a successful body recomposition, they were often intaking around 2.4 to even 3.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is equivalent to roughly 1 gram to 1.6 grams per pound of body weight. In fact, one 2018 study by Schoenfeld and colleagues even showed that every single subject on a high protein diet of a little over 1 gram per pound of body weight gained muscle while losing a kilogram of fat, whereas the subjects in the low protein group still lost 1 kilogram of fat, but many of them also lost muscle with it or didn't see any muscle gain. Based on this, it's clear that body recomposition is more likely to occur with a high protein diet. Although the exact protein intake that is optimal for a body recomposition is relatively unclear at the moment, I think the literature suggests that intaking 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight and maybe even more is ideal. And keep in mind that going higher than this has no harmful effects and may help with keeping you full, but I'd personally suggest just experimenting with it and seeing how your body responds to your protein intake. The third tip is to ensure that you're progressing in the gym. Your muscles need a stimulus to grow, and we provide that through resistance training. As a beginner or detrained lifter, this is relatively easy to do since you're able to gain strength quickly in the gym. So stick to a solid training program and ensure that you're progressively overloading it throughout the weeks, which can be done by simply increasing reps or the weight lifted in your exercises. On the other hand, the more training experience you have, the harder this is to do. But given that you're utilizing only a small deficit with adequate protein, your body still has the energy and positive nitrogen balance it needs to progress in the gym. This has been shown in several studies of trained subjects, for example, elite gymnasts, aspiring physique competitors, and even football players who were already squatting over 380 pounds and benching over 280 pounds when starting their body recomposition. All of them were able to drop body fat while gaining some muscle and strength. The key for more advanced individuals though is sticking to tips 1 and 2 and properly setting up your training program in a way that allows consistent progression, which is something I'll cover in a future video. So to sum the video up, in order to effectively achieve a body recomposition, focus on 1. Maintain a slight caloric deficit that allows a maximum of 0.7% weight loss per week. Just keep in mind that weight loss might not occur, especially in beginners. 2. Intake adequate protein of at least 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. You can experiment with this and try going higher if you please. And 3. Stick to a solid training program that focuses on progressive overload. Now with that being said, I also want to touch on the limitations of body recomposition. It's clear that the closer you are to your genetic potential, the less drastic your body recomposition will be, and it may not occur at all. The same applies for how lean you are. The leaner you are, the less likely you are to recomp, since your body has less fat to utilize for energy. And finally, this isn't an effective strategy for hard gainers or those with a low body fat and need to put on a lot of size. In this case, you should instead focus on lean bulking, which I have a video on and will link in the description box down below.